At exactly 5:42 on a cold Tuesday morning, Sarah Mitchell walked through the glass doors of Harrison and Cole Industries, believing it would be another ordinary workday. Instead, it became the day her entire life changed. She had spent 10 years opening that office before almost everyone else arrived. She knew which lights flickered before they warmed up and which employees quietly depended on her cheerful smile before starting another stressful day. Sarah wasn't just another employee. She was the kind of person every workplace needed but rarely appreciated. A 34-year-old single mother raising her 8-year-old daughter, Emma. She had learned long ago that complaining didn't pay the bills. Showing up did. Every morning before sunrise, she kissed Emma goodbye while she was still asleep, left breakfast neatly prepared on the kitchen counter for the babysitter, and caught the first bus across town. She never arrived late. Not once. Not in 10 years. That morning, something felt different. Before she could even clock in, a message appeared on her phone. Please report to Human Resources immediately. No explanation. No greeting. A strange feeling settled in her stomach. As Sarah walked toward the HR office, employees avoided eye contact. Inside the office, her manager, Carl Benson, sat with a folder already open. He didn't invite her to sit down. He barely looked at her. Sarah. He cleared his throat. I'm afraid your position has been eliminated as part of our restructuring. For a moment, she thought he was joking. I don't understand. I'm sorry. We're making difficult decisions. Your final paycheck will be deposited this afternoon. 10 years. Reduced to less than 2 minutes. She wanted to ask what she had done wrong. Every holiday she worked. Every emergency she covered. Instead, she simply nodded. Collected the small cardboard box containing family photos, a faded coffee mug Emma had painted in kindergarten, and one tiny desk plant. Then she walked out without saying another word. Before we continue, if you enjoy emotional stories with unforgettable twists, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe to the Narrative Minds so you never miss another story that stays with you long after it ends. Sarah stepped out of the building just as the first rays of sunlight stretched across the city skyline. The morning traffic had already begun. People hurried past with coffee cups in one hand and phones in the other, each racing toward another busy workday. For everyone else, it was just another Tuesday. For Sarah, she tightened her grip on the cardboard box as tears blurred her vision. Inside were the only reminders of the life she had spent 10 years building. A framed picture of Emma at her first school play. A notebook filled with encouraging quotes she had written to herself during difficult times. A company appreciation certificate that suddenly felt meaningless. Her phone vibrated. It was the landlord. She hesitated before answering. Sarah, I just wanted to remind you that the rent is due on Friday. I know. I've always trusted you because you've never been late. I'll have it. The call ended before she could explain. Sarah looked at her bank account. $37.46. That was all she had left. How was she supposed to buy groceries? How would she tell Emma they might lose the apartment? She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, don't fall apart. Not yet. Because mothers don't always get the luxury of breaking down. Sometimes, they carry the weight of an entire family without anyone noticing. Sarah started walking toward the bus stop, trying to convince herself that everything would somehow work out. Then, about 30 yards ahead, she noticed a man stumble. At first, nobody paid attention. He reached for a nearby streetlight to steady himself, missed, and collapsed hard onto the sidewalk. His expensive leather briefcase rolled into the street. People looked. Then I kept walking. One woman glanced at him before checking her watch. A businessman stepped around him without slowing down. Someone even pulled out a phone. Not to call for help, to record what was happening. Sarah stopped walking. She looked at the bus pulling into the station. If she missed it, she'd have to wait another 30 minutes. She looked back at the man lying motionless on the pavement. Then she looked at the small cardboard box in her hands. For a brief moment, she considered walking away. After everything that had happened, she told herself someone else would stop. Someone with more money. Someone with more time. Someone whose own life wasn't falling apart. But as she turned to leave, she remembered something her late mother used to tell her. Your circumstances should never decide your character. Sarah slowly put the cardboard box on a nearby bench. Then she ran. She knelt beside the man. Sir. No response. Sir, can you hear me? His breathing was shallow. His face had become pale. Sarah quickly reached for her phone and dialed emergency services. My name is Sarah Mitchell. A man has collapsed outside Harrison and Coal Industries. He's breathing, but barely. Please send an ambulance immediately. The operator instructed her to stay with him. She gently supported his head and spoke calmly. You're going to be okay. Help is coming. The man's eyes opened for only a second. He looked at Sarah, as though he wanted to say something, but no words came out. Within minutes, the sound of approaching sirens echoed through the street. Paramedics rushed over with a stretcher. One of them turned to Sarah. Are you family? She shook her head. I've never met him before. You stayed with him? Of course. The paramedic smiled softly. You probably saved his life. Sarah looked at the unconscious stranger one last time. I'm just glad someone finally stopped. She picked up her cardboard box, adjusted the strap of her worn handbag, and quietly walked away. Sarah barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, the events of the day replayed in her mind. Losing her job, the landlord's call, the stranger collapsed on the sidewalk. She kept wondering if he had survived. By the time the alarm rang at 6 o'clock the next morning, she had managed only a few hours of restless sleep. Emma walked into the tiny kitchen, rubbing her eyes. Mom, are you okay? Sarah forced a smile. Of course, sweetheart. Children often notice the truth before adults do. Emma hugged her tightly. You don't have to pretend with me. For a second, Sarah almost broke down, but she held herself together. I promise we're going to be okay. Emma smiled. I know we will. Those simple words gave Sarah more strength than she realized. Just then, a deep engine rumbled outside the apartment building. Sarah looked through the window. A long black luxury sedan had stopped directly in front of her building. It looked completely out of place in the aging neighborhood. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Children stopped playing. A sharply dressed woman stepped out of the back seat and looked towards Sarah's apartment. A moment later, there was a knock at the door. Sarah opened it cautiously. Good morning. My name is Victoria Ellis. I'm looking for Sarah Mitchell. I'm Sarah. Victoria offered a polite smile. I've been asked to bring you somewhere. Sarah frowned. I think you've got the wrong apartment. I don't. This invitation is specifically for you. Sarah hesitated. I don't even know you. I understand. Victoria reached into her briefcase and handed Sarah a cream-colored envelope. Inside was a single card. It read, Your kindness yesterday deserves a conversation. Transportation has been arranged. No obligation. No pressure. There was no company logo. No signature. No explanation. Only time. 9 a.m. Sarah looked up. Who sent this? I'm afraid I'm not authorized to answer that. Can you at least tell me where we're going? Victoria smiled gently. I think it's better if you hear the answer from him. Him? Victoria nodded. Could this have something to do with the man she had helped? Or was this somehow connected to the company that had fired her? None of it made sense. She looked back at Emma. Her daughter whispered, Mom, I think you should go. Sarah laughed nervously. You trust strangers more than I do. Emma grinned. You always tell me that kindness comes back when we least expect it. Sarah froze. She had said those exact words to Emma hundreds of times. She just never imagined they would be repeated back to her. 20 minutes later, the black sedan pulled away from the apartment building. Neither Sarah nor Victoria spoke during the drive. The city slowly disappeared behind them. Tall office buildings gave way to quiet tree-lined streets. Finally, the car turned through the gates of an elegant private estate. Sarah stared out the window in disbelief. This can't be right. Victoria smiled. It is. The car stopped in front of a beautiful stone mansion. Before Sarah could ask another question, the front door slowly opened. Standing there, looking healthier than the day before, was the very man she had refused to walk past on the sidewalk. He smiled warmly. Sarah stepped out of the car slowly, still trying to understand how her life had changed so dramatically in less than 24 hours. The elderly man walked down the front steps with a warm smile. You look surprised. Sarah let out a nervous laugh. I think that's an understatement. He extended his hand. My name is William Harrison. She shook it politely. I'm just relieved you're feeling better. William looked at her for a moment before speaking. Yesterday, you saved my life. Sarah quickly shook her head. I only did what anyone should have done. William smiled sadly. I wish that were true. He gestured toward the front door. Please, come inside. The home was elegant without feeling extravagant. Family photographs covered the walls instead of expensive artwork. There were pictures of children, graduations, anniversaries, and what looked like company celebrations spanning decades. One photograph caught Sarah's attention. It showed a much younger William standing in front of a newly constructed office building. The sign read, Harrison and Coal Industries. Sarah stared at it. Her heart skipped a beat. She slowly turned toward him. Wait, you founded Harrison and Coal? William nodded. My father started it. I've spent 40 years trying to build it into a company people could be proud of. Sarah's mind raced. The same company. The company that had fired her yesterday. William noticed the confusion on her face. You worked there. It wasn't a question. It was a realization. Sarah nodded quietly. I did. For 10 years. William's expression changed. And yesterday, they let you go. Sarah looked down. It wasn't personal. They said it was restructuring. Silence filled the room. William walked toward the window and stood there for several seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. I've been recovering from heart surgery for months. I decided to return quietly this week. I wanted to see the company without anyone knowing I was watching. He turned back toward Sarah. Instead, I collapsed before I even reached the building. Sarah remembered the briefcase. The expensive suit. Everything suddenly made sense. William smiled. I don't remember much. But the paramedics told me something. They said dozens of people walked past me. Some stared. Some filmed. But only one person stayed. He looked directly into Sarah's eyes. That person was the woman my own company had fired less than an hour earlier. Sarah didn't know what to say. William continued. Do you know what troubled me most? She shook her head. It wasn't that I collapsed. It was discovering that the values I spent 40 years building may have disappeared while I was away. Sarah lowered her eyes. I don't blame the company. William gently interrupted. I do. Before Sarah could respond, there was another knock at the study door. Victoria stepped inside. Sir, they've arrived. William nodded. Good. He looked back at Sarah. I've invited a few people here this morning. People I believe owe both of us an explanation. Sarah frowned. What do you mean? William walked toward the conference room at the end of the hallway. As he opened the doors, Sarah froze. Sitting around the large oak table were her former manager, the human resources director, the regional operations executive, and 3 members of the company's board. Every one of them looked shocked to see her. Her former manager, Carl Benson, nearly dropped the folder he was holding. No one had expected Sarah Mitchell to walk into that room, especially not beside William Harrison. The room fell completely silent. Then William calmly closed the door behind them. This meeting, he said, is about much more than one employee. It's about the kind of company we've become. For the first time in 10 years. The people who had dismissed Sarah without a second thought were about to answer to the man who built the company. And none of them knew that William had already made a decision that would change all of their futures. The silence inside the conference room was almost unbearable. No one spoke. No one even looked at Sarah. Just yesterday, she had walked out of Harrison and Coal Industries carrying a cardboard box, convinced 10 years of loyalty had meant nothing. Now, she stood beside the company's founder. And suddenly, everyone who had ignored her couldn't seem to meet her eyes. William Harrison slowly took his seat at the head of the table. His calm expression made the room even more uncomfortable. He folded his hands. I've spent the last 40 years believing that character is more valuable than profit. His eyes moved from one executive to another. So I'd like someone to explain how a woman who gave this company 10 years of faithful service was dismissed in less than 2 minutes. No one answered. Finally, Carl Benson cleared his throat. The restructuring plan required us to reduce staffing costs. William nodded. I've read the report. Carl looked relieved. But I also noticed something interesting. William opened a folder. Sarah Mitchell received outstanding performance evaluations every single year. He turned another page. 0 disciplinary actions. Another page. Perfect attendance. He looked up. So why was she chosen? The human resources director adjusted her glasses. We believed she was replaceable. The words hung in the air. William slowly closed the folder. Replaceable. He repeated the word as though tasting it. Do you know what I found replaceable yesterday? Everyone looked at him. The people who walked past me while I lay unconscious on the sidewalk. The room became even quieter. William continued. My driver was delayed. My phone had fallen several feet away. I couldn't call for help. He looked directly at Carl. Do you know who stopped? Carl remained silent. The woman you considered replaceable. Sarah shifted uncomfortably. She hadn't come here for revenge. She certainly hadn't expected to become the center of attention. William noticed. He smiled gently. Sarah, I'm sorry you've been placed in this position. She shook her head. I didn't help you because I wanted anything. I know. You helped me because that's who you are. Then William stood. He walked toward the large window overlooking the company's headquarters. When my father founded this business, he used to tell every new employee something. He paused. Buildings don't make companies. People do. He turned back toward the board. Somewhere along the way, we forgot. One of the board members finally spoke. Mr. Harrison, what would you like us to do? William didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked back toward Sarah. He handed her a small envelope. She looked confused. What's this? A thank you. Sarah slowly opened it. Inside was not a check, not a job offer, not a contract. It was a handwritten letter. She unfolded it carefully. The first line read, "Yesterday you reminded me why I started this company." By the time she reached the final sentence, tears filled her eyes. William smiled warmly. I wanted those words to come before anything else. Because gratitude should never be measured in dollars. Sarah looked up. I don't know what to say. You don't have to. William Harrison looked around the conference room one last time. Every executive waited for him to speak. Finally, he broke the silence. Yesterday, I learned something more valuable than any financial report could ever teach me. He walked slowly toward the center of the room. I learned that our company has become very good at measuring performance. He paused. But we've stopped measuring character. No one moved. No one interrupted. William picked up the folder containing Sarah's employment records. For 10 years, this woman gave her best to this company. She arrived before sunrise. She stayed late when others went home. She missed birthdays, weekends, and holidays because she believed her hard work mattered. He looked directly at the executives. And when difficult times came, you didn't even give her the dignity of a real conversation. Carl lowered his head. The human resources director quietly wiped away a tear. William continued. So today, we're going to change more than one person's future. He pressed a button on the conference table. The large screen behind him lit up. Across it appeared 3 simple words. People before profits. The room fell silent again. Effective immediately, William said, every employee dismissal will require an independent review. No one with a record like Sarah's will ever again lose their livelihood because it's convenient. Another slide appeared. The Sarah Mitchell Employee Care Program. Sarah stared at the screen in disbelief. William smiled. This program will provide emergency financial assistance, career counseling, and retraining opportunities for employees facing unexpected hardship. He turned toward Sarah. You reminded me that companies don't change the world. People do. And sometimes, the people with the least are the ones who give the most. Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks. She had walked into the room expecting answers. She never imagined her kindness would inspire a company-wide change. William wasn't finished. He reached into his jacket pocket and removed one final envelope. This one, he said with a smile, is for you. Sarah slowly opened it. Inside was an offer unlike anything she had expected. It wasn't simply a job. It was an invitation to become Director of Employee Experience, a newly created leadership role focused on improving employee well-being, mentoring staff, and ensuring that compassion remained part of every major decision the company made. Sarah looked up, speechless. I've never managed people like this. William smiled. No, you've done something far more difficult. You've cared for people when you had every reason not to. You can't teach that in business school. The room erupted into applause. Even Carl stood and joined in. When the applause finally faded, he walked towards Sarah. I'm sorry. I was so focused on numbers. I forgot there was a person behind them. Sarah looked at him for a moment. Then she smiled. I forgive you. Not because what happened was acceptable, but because carrying bitterness would only keep yesterday alive. Emma ran to the door when her mom got home. Mom, what happened? Sarah knelt and hugged her tightly. You remember what you told me yesterday? Emma nodded. You said kindness comes back when we least expect it. Sarah smiled through tears. You were right. She handed Emma the handwritten letter William had given her. Emma slowly read the first line aloud. She looked up. So we're going to be okay? Sarah hugged her even tighter. We're going to be more than okay. Outside the apartment, the sun was beginning to set. It looked nothing like the sunrise that had marked the worst morning of Sarah's life. Because sometimes, the darkest morning becomes the beginning of the brightest chapter. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because one act of kindness has the power to change hearts that policies never could. And somewhere inside Harrison and Cole Industries, a new sign now hung in the main lobby. It simply read, Character is what people remember long after the job title is forgotten.